Welcome to our podcast, a collection of interesting stories. Welcome today to a podcast on Parkinson's. Parkinson's is a neurodegenerative disorder of the central nervous system caused by the lack of dopamine in the brain. There is no cure, but it's also not a death sentence. It is mostly seen as a movement disorder, but it's much more than that. And everyone with Parkinson's has a different journey. The symptoms could be different and the intensity could be different. The classic symptoms are tremor, slow movement, rigid muscles, poor posture, loss of balance, speech changes, facial changes, loss of automated movements, loss of smell, and tiredness. And what you don't see is depression, of the suicidal end of depression, for me when we were talking about it, anxiety where I couldn't leave the house, constipation, urinary control, feeling alone in a room full of people, trouble opening eyes, which is unique to a few people with Parkinson's, and I'm lucky enough to be one of those, loss of taste, restless leg syndrome, REM sleep disorder, and random pain. So all in all, I'm a winner. It puts pressures on marriages, on your work situation, on friendships and family. It is all a pain in the ass, especially when things seem to change daily. They treat it with medicines, Matapar or levodopa, which is like dopamine, and medicines that make this drug last longer, be stronger, and give you back some of what you've lost. The trouble is some of these drugs themselves has side effects, and in my experience, things like hallucinations, confusion, and nausea. And some would say I've had confusion my whole career, but there we are. But again, there is no one size fits all. But what I do know about Parkinson's is I've had it for 10 years. My original symptom was losing sight in one eye, in my eyes, making me effectively blind, but my eyes were okay. My eyelids just didn't open. And this was an unusual first symptom, so I went to an ophthalmologist who injected my eyes with Botox to try and help. I had 2 operations removing the muscles around my eyes, which were working against me. And as some doctors can do, even though I had started shaking, he was laser focused on fixing my eyes and ignoring the wider symptoms. The surgery helped a lot, but the Botox didn't do anything at all. I got a second opinion that said it was all in my head, and I should see a psychiatrist because there was something I didn't want to see. While I initially thought this guy was an idiot, I still progressed to talking to a psychiatrist who said there's nothing wrong with you psychologically. So this guy was an idiot. Local MDs are usually useless when it comes to PD, but I went to a local doctor who moved my arms around my shoulders in their socket and said I had cogwheeling. This is a hallmark symptom of PD, shown through jerky, ratchet-like movements in the shoulder joint. He referred me to a movement neurologist that he knew. In the waiting room, the other waiting patients diagnosed me with PD. This is how I found out. Parkinson's disease, by the way, PD. The neuro put me on many medications, some trial and some failure. Others were better, and eventually we got the medicines to where they were effective as they can be. Then we entered a different realm. We entered the era of surgery, deep brain stimulation, which would change my life. This is a procedure while you're awake, or while I was awake, to drill 2 holes in the head and connect configurable nodes through wires to a battery in your chest. They screwed a frame into my skull with no drugs, just small injections and the 4 points of entry. This was the most painful time, but soon they started drilling into my skull which I assumed would be small holes for some unknown reason, but they were actually quite big holes. I couldn't see what was going on, but they were much bigger than I expected. I've added a photo in the podcast. As soon as they touched the spot, which was as big as a piece of rice standing upright, the tremors stopped. Then they put me under, fed wires through my brain cavity into my chest, which I charge weekly. I woke up walking and talking with improved facial features. And you saw that.
I did.
While this outcome was excellent, it only solved the publicly visible symptoms. The surgeon was excellent, and the 3 or 4 benefits I got were shaking, walking, facial features, and speech. I don't think I got much else. The rest of the benefits I got from drugs or haven't been resolved. Going back to my neuro, he, like the other ones before him, was solely focused on DBS and trying to get me a better outcome. But once you achieve the maximum benefit, you sort of know. I had pain in my legs, severe pain in my feet, couldn't sleep. These were issues ignored by my neuro. And it was a very good neuro for the time when I needed the surgery. But I needed to move on. And that's a good lesson for everyone here, that just because you've got a doctor who seems to think he knows everything doesn't mean he's right. There's no one answer to Parkinson's. I have a new neuro now. For the first time, a doctor talked to my wife and asked her opinion. She's addressing the remaining issues I needed to see her about, which is the feet, the pain, which was ignored by previous doctors. What's missing from all these documentation, books, online articles, is an absolute agreement of what you'll go through. There is no book that'll tell you what you will go through. There's no book that'll tell you what psychologically you'll go through, or what your family will go through, or what your partner will go through. Every book is slightly different. Some symptoms are missing in some and are in others. Like the eyes, which was called blepharospasm. I was originally diagnosed with blepharospasm, not Parkinson's, and then eventually they said Parkinson's includes blepharospasm. So your journey in this disease, which is a collection of symptoms they call PD, is yours, and your path is different from everyone else. Solicit feedback from wider than your doctor. Change doctors if you hear or don't see the focus you want, and don't read the internet because it's not very positive. The first thing I read on the internet was you had 5 years to live, and as far as I know, you don't die from Parkinson's. You die with it. So let's discuss the effect on everyone else. I have my partner here, who's my carer. And that caring degree has varied substantially through the treatment, the first 7 years. From little effort at all to 100% effort and loss of her life while she was looking after me. I see a lot of people with Parkinson's who are separated. The stress on the ones close to you is terrible. Seeing your partner fade away over time can be devastating. Losing capability. Additionally, some experience sexual aggression, impulse control issues while drinking, eating, gambling, further strains relationships. With my core friends have been pretty good. They don't understand. They really haven't read anything on Parkinson's, but I send them notes about why I feel distant in a crowd and leave places early and things like this. Often visible symptoms driven by brain chemical changes, specifically low dopamine, leading to apathy, depression and anxiety. This results in a loss of motivation, emotional withdrawal from loved ones, and a diminished sense of self. This is why I sometimes am less than talkative, leave early, sometimes don't turn up. And my core friends have been supportive on that. But what's interesting about the whole journey is it's not just about me. It's about my wife, our kids. I was worried originally that I would pass this on to my children. We've solved that problem, so it's not. So let's talk about the journey with my partner here. And I think this is really interesting because every doctor we've talked to, bar the last, no one doctor talked to my wife and asked her what she was seeing, what she believed was happening. And it was a waste of talent because she's there every day checking, watching, helping me. And again, sometimes it's a very high degree of help and sometimes it's a low degree of help. But I have my partner here today, so we'll talk about what questions she has and what she would like to share with people that are going through Parkinson's.
Thank you. I think that so much of the experience of a carer comes from the journey that your partner is experiencing. It can be tough and all-consuming and at times very lonely, and you have to address this and look after yourself.
There was a period, though, where you didn't get that.
No, there was a period in discovery of the health issues that you had.
Not denial?
Where, well, my personality was looking for a fix, a cure. This is random, we can do this. And then you start to realise that some of the symptoms are not going to go away, and you have to moderate how you view someone. And as we had, I think, quite a long journey to diagnosis, we weren't in a position to decide that this is a chronic condition. I was still in the, this is an acute thing that we can get through. Now, to me, it is a condition that we just have to deal with in our normal day.
So we have to live with the side effects, the effects. There's nothing you can do about some of them.
No. And I think the most difficult thing for any carer, not just someone with PD in their world, is that it's a daily proposition. It's not, I'm going to plan my week out and it's going to go that way. You have to be constantly ready for these random days where life just stops for someone with PD. They have to rest. They have to sit in the dark. Whatever works for them on that day is what is required. Now, the learning that I took away from that was I don't need to do that. I was jumping in and just closing my life down. And then when you know this is a long-term condition, you begin to realise that you have to foster your own life and your own lifestyle that keeps you healthy and continues to give you a fulfilling life. So once we got through the random symptoms and the frustration of a partner that was not themselves, it became much easier. As a couple, it did. Experienced through the treating doctors when they were never asking me for information or feedback, it was very frustrating. I didn't want to be this loud person interrupting, but I also knew I was a very underused resource. And this just confounded me, that they were asking someone with the symptoms to describe them and not someone that had seen them.
And I tend to be positive.
Yeah. As a couple, we're always been very aware of each other's autonomy, but during doctors' appointments, I discussed it with my partner and decided that while it felt a little bit paternal, I would be a second set of ears in every doctor's appointment because, one, PD has memory issues, and human nature just leads us to hear the good and minimise the less good. And that's when I've got my partner's back, because sometimes I hear things that aren't so great and we have to face them. Maybe not in the doctor's office, but we'll face them at a later time. So I found it very confounding after, yes, doing a little bit of research online. I'm guilty. But I registered a year before his diagnosis. I thought that my partner had Parkinson's. I logged it with someone just for my own self-awareness, and I was proven true. I didn't want to be proven true. I was still looking for a cure at this point. It was at this point, pretty much pre-diagnosis, that as a couple, I had been forced to make conscious decisions to readjust our lives. It was difficult. We didn't have a path, so we're kind of walking in the dark. But then I had to start doing activities alone, shoulder the running of our lives together, which was always pretty much a 50-50. I took over all of it, which was a heavy burden, but I had to protect my health, my mental health, and my family.
It was interesting because I used to do all the paperwork and all the tax returns and all the dealing with agents and all that sort of stuff, which was closer to my business type. And suddenly I just could not do that. I was on the couch. Sometimes my partner would ask me what I wanted for dinner and I couldn't answer because I didn't know. It was a difficult period, and I think that's why so many partners break up is they don't predict what's going to happen because you can't. And it's a different prospect every day.
I agree. The different prospect every day, once you get your head around that, it can still be disappointing and frustrating, but if you give yourself that acceptance, life becomes much easier to get through. Post-diagnosis, I had relief, but also the sadness of this is where we are. There were things that we had to learn. There were meds to try, therapies to do, which gave us a path. But the difficulty was accepting no cure, and we moved pretty quickly to life on a daily basis was unpredictable.
And I didn't like the PD does not have any definitive test. And I know people have said there are definitive tests, but I failed all the definitive tests.
Mm.
So there's no blood test that says you have Parkinson's. There's no blood test that says you are at risk of Parkinson's. There is no agreement on how you get Parkinson's. It's just a collection of symptoms that are coupled together called PD.
Yes. I think that does make it difficult because Western society believe that doctors can make diagnoses, and we want that clarity. It's human nature to want black and white, yes or no, but PD doesn't offer that. It's been frustrating for me because I have a can-do personality. So it's been really hard to witness someone seemingly give up and stop trying to push. And that was one of the biggest mistakes. It put a lot of pressure on our relationship because on my side there was grief and disappointment. But what I was doing was watching my partner come to terms with his inability to do things and to find a grace from stepping back and doing only what they can do.
I had no grace. You would take my chainsaw off me. You take my ladders off me, all my electric tools off me. Because
No,
I was still arrogant enough to think I could use them, and all ended up in hospital.
Yes, I had kind of forgotten about that. I'd given you grace way too early. But I think that PD, deep depression, recovering from some horrible medical conditions, carers have to, step back and go, you know what? If they are up, showered, had their meds, that could be a win for the day. So we just have to, all of us, work on our attitudes towards those that we love and what they're going through, and accept it and applaud the little wins. So I had to move on to what I do to look after myself, and I feel very strongly about this. I never really had to address it because life had been really good. But when you put under such pressures, I had to learn how to support myself as a carer. And trust me, carer's fatigue is real, and it sneaks up on you, much like grief. It hits you when you least expect it. So
I used to formularise your happiness.
Yes, and that worked really well.
I said two
yogas,
2
runs,
and visit with the girls and visit with friends.
Yes, and stay outside.
And stay outside, and those things kept Lisa happy. And, there was times when I didn't want Lisa to go and do something, when I was really sick, and I had to just be quiet.
But we also pivoted in that if there was a period where you were extremely anxious or extremely under the weather through your symptoms, I would be very precise in the amount of time I would be away. So there was a clock to look at and know that I would be back.
Yeah.
And in good times that just disappears, and then when required, I'll become more accountable to my time just to make sure your anxiety is okay. And quite often, just having a time that I may be around is enough to alleviate anxiety.
Yeah, and anxiety, we're talking about getting in the car and going to the bakery, and halfway to the bakery, I'm saying to my wife, I can't do this.
True.
She has to turn back and drop me off. And it's important to note that it's not necessarily the Parkinson's that causes these issues. It's sometimes the wrong medication. So I tried the wrong antidepressant medication once, and I was, there's no way to say it,
suicidal, but also just not your personality. And there was no saying, hey, you're not right.
Yeah.
It took a lot for you to realise, because the medication was so changing your personality.
And it was making me sick. Some medications, I didn't know when they had in a bucket at 9 o'clock in the morning. So the plans for the day are gone.
So back to being a caregiver. I think.
Back to me.
Well, back to me. I'm the guest. I've got 6 things that I've put into action as a caregiver, and it still doesn't mean I don't get fatigued, but I keep healthy. I manage my sleep, fitness and health. That is one point. My second one is I sort out talk therapy, because it gives you a place to speak without judgment. And sometimes you get a tiny glimmer of perspective that you and even your friends haven't been able to garnish, which has been so good for me. We have, as a partnership, spoken a lot about acceptance. And it's not one grand discussion that we had. It's an ongoing one, because as a sufferer or someone that has Parkinson's or a carer, not every day you feel accepting anyway. So we have to continue having these chats about what's frustrating us, and then we can put a frustration aside and go back to acceptance. I had to learn particularly what my triggers were for carers' fatigue, so I could recognise it and put my little plan into action. Much like people have their asthma plan, I've got my little plan on fatigue. So just as an example, my feeling of being in a lockdown COVID is often when I think, hang on, I haven't been doing anything for myself and I'm starting to bounce off the walls. So I've also sought out people who know your situation, but they leave the PD at the door and they see you simply for who you are. So it's completely okay to have a set of friends where you go, you know what, partner's doing well, let's go and have dinner. It can be very regenerating to not talk about it. We've all got friends we can talk about it all day, but sometimes it's nice to have the conversation, never touch on it, because you need that air. And the last thing I've done, which I think as you age we should all be doing anyway, is I've started expanding what hobbies and activities I do to bring joy. I had lots of activities, but now I've got ones that take less energy. Studying music, trying to put paint on a piece of paper, just little things that are different and they expand your mind and they bring you joy. And some of these are particularly good if you do have to stay close to home. I'm a runner and an exerciser, so sometimes that doesn't fit with a quiet day. So I think I'll move on to why I sought help and what I got out of having talk therapy. Because pre-diagnosis, I was very confused and frustrated. I was probably really angry. We had situationally changed our whole lives to live a certain way, and that suddenly came to a stop. None of the activities we'd planned could be participated in unless I did them alone, and I found that it was too sad to do that because I was leaving my partner behind and I didn't want to do that.
Maybe we'll just talk about that for a second. I retired early and moved down the coast, and we both had aspirations for the surfing, motorcycle riding, all the sort of things we were going to do. Almost all of them for me didn't work, or as my Parkinson got worse, I couldn't do. And I used to play golf and I used to be reasonable, but then I got to the point where I couldn't hit a fairway at all. I couldn't hit any distance fair because I didn't have the flexibility. So I had to stop those things. And I took up other hobbies. So we actively sat down and worked through other hobbies. And I got bees, and I really enjoyed managing the beehives and these sort of things. And then I got anaphylactic. So I had to stop doing that. And the reason we moved down the coast was to relax and have this lifestyle that we've worked our whole lives and felt we deserved. But we've had to recently move back to the city because of some events. So a bit of background on my DBS, you can turn it down to the point where I can't speak. If you ask me my name, I not only can't say my name, I can't think my name. And after seeing the neurologist one day, he was changing settings all over the place. And I don't know how to describe this, but I had a fit.
You had some sort of turn in the car where head movement, arm movement, I'm assuming legs were going too. I was driving, and it was, one, very dangerous because the car could have been knocked out of gear. But it was very frightening in the sense that there was no control, and it resolved somewhat.
24 hours later.
No, it resolved in the short term. We had the strangest idea to actually continue to go out for dinner, and then halfway through it started to come on again, where instead of using a fork politely, it was being stabbed into the food. So we left, and it got to a point where I couldn't get my partner down the hallway to get to bed because of his limbs. So this was a very pivotal moment in our decision to sadly abandon our life that we were trialling, which we trialled for 7 years, and come back to the city where we were closer to our beautiful family, but also medical intervention if required. We didn't know what this was, so we pretty much made a decision that it was time to move.
Yeah, and when I had what I call a fit, I looked outside in the beautiful countryside and it was dark and no lights, and I thought, this is really not the place for me anymore. And while I intellectually knew that, I still mourn the loss of the coastal property. Anyway.
So I was talking about what I got out of seeing a psychologist. So previously I said that pre-diagnosis I was confused, frustrated. I think I was very angry too. I was trying to fix everything, which was my nature, and it had worked throughout my adult life. It wasn't working, so I had to talk about this, and it was imperative that I learn that you can't fix everything. So I worked on a toolbox of skills. I think I did pretty straightforward psych interventions where I learnt a toolbox of skills to strengthen myself and to sort of recognise when to use those skills, because nature sometimes is, if someone's prodding you and pushing you, you're going to react. But sometimes it's better to step back rather than react. So I learnt to temper my language to de-stress moments rather than to jump in and inflame them even more. It has been a game changer.
For both of us.
For my support, for my partner, but also just the calm that it's brought into the house. Doesn't mean I'm calm on the inside, but I know I've done what's needed to keep a situation from turning into nothing but frustration.
I mean, as an example, I couldn't get off the couch for months, and Lisa would say, let's go for a walk. And I would say, I can't go for a walk. I'll fall over. I'll trip over the dog. I'll do this, I'll do that. So Lisa was struggling with the reality of the situation. But she changed her language to things like, I've got your back. I'm with you on this journey. And that changed everything for me, because Lisa was coming to terms with not being able to fix it, understanding it was its own journey that we are conforming to, and we used to conform our own language, our own path to our own destiny.
They were our decisions. Now they're not so much our decisions, our life journey.
So that change in language made a huge difference to me, and I've mentioned that a few times.
Yeah, I think changing your language also works on yourself, because it's calming in itself to use calmer language, and to know that, you might have a feeling that's a little bit inflamed, but you can walk that off later. Whereas your partner may not actually be feeling your feelings either. So you just own them. A huge part of me getting through all of this was because I learnt to stop minimising, because I learnt to stop trying to fix, I also had to learn to stop minimising the situation I was in and speak frankly about where I was. I had good support around me. I had people that understood things weren't right, particularly our children, and I could hear myself covering and minimising, and they're not stupid. They could hear this, and I think it's a great disservice to your family to not be honest about how you're feeling. Just because you're a mother doesn't mean that you don't feel. And I think I had to get over that. I didn't want to cause them pain, but I wasn't causing them pain. Our situation was difficult. And to minimise it was a disservice to all of us, I think.
Yeah.
So talk therapy has been a real change for me, and it's something that while you work on every day, it's good to have someone that in difficult times you can recheck, go back in, and it's like having a little car service. Just get everything put into alignment again and off you go back into the world.
I can only imagine people with different symptoms. I had a period, what's it been, 10 years total?
Yeah, I'd say 8.
8 years. So we had a bad period. It sort of bottomed out and it's come up again, and I'm much more in tune with my abilities now. Lisa's much more in tune with my capabilities. I'm very energetic in the morning, so I do as much as I can around the house to help my partner in the morning. And then she doesn't expect anything from the afternoon from me, and I can't do anything in the afternoon. So I'm usually asleep on the couch, sleep in the bedroom, sleep in my office. The good thing is I don't stray far from home because I've got to have my sleeps. So. But imagine,
I know where you are.
Have you tagged me?
No, I don't need to.
Some of the symptoms are quite, not the symptoms I have, but the symptoms we're aware of are even worse. There is an inclination to be betting.
Well, this was something that can come from the DBS, is impulse control issues. I'm not quite sure. I think it could just be linked to Parkinson's as well. But it was something that was brought up that post-DBS you may have impulse control issues, be it...
In fact, the example was if you run around the hospital naked after the DBS surgery, and I said, well, take a photo before you stop me because, I think it'll be funny. I'm sure a 6'3" guy running through the aisles of a hospital wouldn't be that funny, but it can affect you. The impulse control can affect eating, betting,
Alcohol,
sexually. I was asked by a neuro recently, are you sexually aggressive? And I said, I didn't think that was an option.
boom.
No one laughed, but I was laughing inside. So I think some other people have got it differently. The path of degradation, my path is quite good. I've got through the surgeries, 5 surgeries. I've got through all the medication. We're fine-tuning. I'm energetic in the mornings. We're back to travelling. So we've got back to what normalcy I didn't think we would get to at the bottom of the curve. Do you agree?
Yes. I sort of in the months before DBS, there was quite a loss to your mobility, and the Parkinson's hood was well and truly on your face. So the fact that we've pushed that aside for at least a while has been a great win for us, and it has enabled us to resume a somewhat more micromanaged life, but we can resume doing the things we love. The ability to travel has been a beautiful additive to our life, because we've travelled all of our adult lives through work and pleasure, and to get that back, well, to lose it seemed like a very harsh punishment, and now we've got it back. So we're, as much as we can, taking those moments to travel.
But even in travelling now, we plan our trips based on my inadequacies. So when we arrive in Europe, we don't go straight to a tour or anything else. I have a number of days it takes me to balance my medication again, and then acclimatise to the time zone, which my partner does in about 6 hours, and I take 3 to 5 days. We also do certain types of cruises. My partner can go off and do excursions or anything she wants during the day, and I can stay on the boat if I need be. So we're back to travel, but we're back to post-Parkinson's travel. And it's much better than it was, because we couldn't do it before.